wonderful evening ahead. Thank you for your attendance, and I hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Clive. Good evening, all, and welcome to the, as Clive says, the seventh. I think it's the seventh seminar, so it's quite appropriate that we're actually focusing on the United Nations number 7 Sustainable Development Goal. I'm Mark Fenty, and I'm the CEO of a charitable organisation, which is called Positive Activities Developments, CIC. So we're a community interest company. And I happen to be, for my sins, the community lead for our United Nations Greater Lincolnshire group as well. Please bear in mind, I know we're talking about sustainable energy production, but I'm not an energy scientist. I'm going to leave some of that to Russell later on. I'm sure he's the guy that can help me out a little bit there. I'm not an energy expert. I'm a community man that works with all ages and all abilities, and we happen to my organization's Positive Activities Developments happens to manage a place in Humberston called the Humberston Eco Conservation Centre, which is we'll talk about a little bit later on. This evening, like Clive says, you've got 2 presenters for the price of 1. That's the first for our association. You've got me, and then later on Russell. So I'm going to start off with what does SDG 7 mean, and how is it connected to the other Sustainable Development Goals? I'm sure Bert is looking at my notes as well, and he's going to do the switch the PowerPoint on that we've done. Hopefully you can see that in a moment. I think Clive's looking now. Sorry, Bert is hopefully going to show you the PowerPoint that I've sent him earlier on. There we go, as if by magic. Okay, so the first question after this slide is, so what does SDG 7 mean, and is it connected to other SDGs? Well, it is all about sustainable energy, and it's sustainable energy that's affordable, reliable, and sustainable modern energy for all by 2030. And as we all know, in a global sense, some have got it, some haven't, and there's going to be different strategies employed all over the world to hopefully help this happen. So the targets, the main 3 targets of this is to ensure there's the universal access to the modern energy services, but also to increase the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. On our site, and we will talk about that a bit later, it's an off-grid site. We have to use a mixture of renewable energy sources. I think it's accepted nationally, globally, that no single energy source can deliver all that's needed to be done. It's got to be an energy mix. What's interesting with these 3 targets is that it finishes on the slide, at least, with double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency, and that is really quite appropriate tonight, because Russell is going to actually talk about this, because it's okay when people haven't got energy, but there's people that's got energy, but we need to make that more energy efficient, and he's going to give us some really good insights about that. So we're going to take a brief look at some of the recent global energy news initiatives. So on the next slide that I've done, there are some hyperlinks. So those of you that perhaps can get this PowerPoint presentation sent to you afterwards, you will be able to look at in a bit more detail as to some of the hyperlinks, which are really quite interesting to have a look at. So with that, Bert's going to show us that. So these are a few news headlines, and I've had a bit of help from Clive with these, so thank you, Clive. I'm not going to go into massive details and just read everything word by word, because I think it's easy enough for you to see. But the top one, for instance, we're looking at renewable energy of 25% from solar for Uzbekistan. I mean, these are fundamental improvements, and that they're going in that direction. And US is 40% of its power demand from solar by 2035. Those little blue things at the end of the text are the hyperlinks. So if you do get the PowerPoint, please do go and have a look. Also, Chevron are announcing this sustainable aviation fuel investment. And as some of you know, in the Humber region, we are working with partners such as P66, i.e. Conoco, who are also working with a huge partnership to do just that as well. So there's some really, really exciting things happening. I think we can all agree, though, nothing seems to be happening quick enough, but we can talk about that a bit later. We've got Ørsted. They've just signed some major contracts with Germany and Germany companies. And again, they're doing so well with the offshore wind, with the Hornsea projects. They're involved in all sorts at the moment. And again, we're pleased to be working with them ourselves. I want to focus, though, on all of this. I mean, that's the news, but at the bottom, Clive kindly put Humberston Eco Conservation Centre, which is, of course, the project I'm managing at the moment, which is quite challenging. It's an off-grid 15-acre rural site, and our aspirations are to make it a renewable showcase of community-led, and that's a key word, community-led renewable energy technology and conservation programs. So we're really quite excited about the challenges, but believe me, and I'll talk to Russell separately, there are some huge challenges, because it's okay saying off grid, but when it comes to your visitors wanting to go to the loo or to be warm, how do you go about doing that? Especially if you're a charitable organization, you do need quite substantial amounts of money to make it all work. So we're really excited about some of the unique features of our site, and we're going to move on to the next slide that we can just talk in a little bit more detail about our aspiration. And our aspiration, shared by all of our trustees and directors, is the aspiration global to local. We cannot do anything about global decisions that's made by governments, whether it's UK government or international, but what we can do is engage with the local people. And we think our vision, which is really a 2 and a 5 year vision, is innovative. We think it's affordable. We think it's scalable. And at the same time, we believe there's an awful lot of social purpose. So I'll put a couple of images on this particular slide. And the first thing I'm going to mention is Aqua Trainer and Aquatainer, which we're really, really excited about, because Jan and Cliff have been involved in this project, and we are going to be showcasing a demonstration Aqua Trainer unit at COP26. Such is the level of interest. And what Aqua Trainer is a small version of a containerized unit. Half of it, well, part of it, has fish in the corner, all doing their wonderful thing. There's trays in there for seedlings, and of course, it's a controlled environment so that we could grow nutritional and sustainable food. So it's a great demonstration of the circular economy. And Aqua Trainer is very much a small scale unit that we're going to be demonstrating at COP26. So we, as a small community project, we're really excited about it. When we're now we've gone through the prototype 1 and testing stage, we're now working on adding additional features such as remote monitoring and such as off-grid capabilities, so that we can bespoke this unit to the client's needs. So Aquitainer is just a bigger version using shipping containers, as you can see in the illustration. We've had British aerospace engineers help us. And don't forget, this is all with a small local group of people with a small site. And this is why we like this global to local sort of phraseology, because we're using our innovation and the hard work of our volunteers and the people that's involved with the project. And we believe if we can demonstrate that the community is managing this, it's involved in the design, the co-design process, and the benefits, and I mean the social benefits, which are huge on their own, we believe this is a model that could be replicated in UK regions and also internationally as well. I've on the slide, I also mentioned H2AD aerobic digestion, because we are fortunate. Our small charity has benefited from a European program, and we happen to have one of only 3 AD units in the world on our site. It's just going through planning permission, but essentially uses waste, such as food. You know, it can use food, grasses, ice cream, coffee, spent coffee, or lots of things. So the first thing it does is reduce landfill, which is a tick. But more importantly, we are going to be using it to create off-grid energy, which will then service the community cafe and other electrical devices on the site. These are not expensive items, by the way. The Aqua Trainer is not expensive, nor is the AD unit. And on our site, we have got this great conservation initiatives, because it's off-grid. And our aspiration is to reduce the carbon footprints, show people renewable energy technologies, get them involved in hands-on, learning new skills, meeting new people. And that in itself leads to creating a healthier, more resilient and more economically independent community. So it's, you know, everybody's a winner, and they get buy-in when they're involved in the co-design and the co-management. Then they are going to talk to more people, they're going to get involved. And of course, the benefit to a small scale community-led organization is there's no real costs. So we can do an awful lot of things commercial companies can't. Finally, on this slide, sorry to spend a bit of time on this one, but it's just trying to demonstrate that this small site, and it is a small site, will obviously feature a wide mix of renewable energy installations, such as wind, solar, battery storage, geothermal, air source pumps, heat source pumps. We're going to have everything on it. We hope to make arrangements with lots of different companies. We're not necessarily promoting it, but if we demonstrate it and they ask us who does this, who manufactures this, then of course we want to make sure that we can pass that information on. We're you know, with this mix of energy, renewables, and with the conservation, what we're trying to do overall is to educate the visitors, promoting better and more positive behavior change. So we're really, as I say, excited about the sites, but there's an awful lot of work. Whether, in fact, the government helps organisations like us with this so-called levelling up agenda is yet to be seen, because we are doing everything that I'm speaking about on the Humberston site on our own. There's been no funding from government whatsoever. And it tells me that if we can do it, other communities can do it. I said earlier on that the United Nations SDG 7, the energy, sustainable energy SDG, of course, is connected to several more SDGs. So the next slide, I'm not going to talk about each one individually, but it's just to sort of demonstrate that it has a massive impact in many other SDGs, climate change, education, water, economic development. I just spoke to you a moment ago about how it could even impact on the community. It can make them more economically independent, growing its own food, creating its own energy, and therefore reducing carbon emissions, for instance, in transport terms. And biodiversity loss is a key one on our site. So we are developing a community-led approach to beekeeping network, where we will act as a hub. And we're going to use cameras to remotely connect to people that can't visit our site. So yeah, if we could have the next slide then, please, Clive. Bert, thank you. So a few bits of progress, and again, thank you, Clive, for your help on identifying a few bits and pieces. I could use this entire presentation on a massive statistics, and there's plenty out there. There's plenty of great community projects. There's plenty of global initiatives. I mean, everybody can see that there's an awful lot going on at the moment, and hopefully COP26 is going to focus the minds to some real actions, both commercial actions, government actions, and hopefully for my type of project, the community actions, because they do need support. And I'm not entirely sure that that's there right now. Hopefully we'll have a voice at COP26 to make sure that they do listen to at least what we're saying, that we have a voice and that we can create mini grids, almost a community mini grid, because one of our aspirations at the Humberston site, for instance, is not just to educate people, have a bit of fun doing it and develop conservation programs, but it's almost its own mini grid. We'll create our own energy for social benefit. And on our site, one of our longer term aspirations, for instance, is to build a £1 million visitor centre off grid. And we will install large scale solar wind, which we will then feed back into grid. So we will be a net exporter, not just 100% carbon neutral, but we will become, or our desire is to become, a net exporter. These are huge challenges, and I'm aware, my directors, my trustees are all aware of the massive challenges, but we've got to do something, and that's what we're trying to do. So again, the only downside to all of these initiatives, of course, is some of the underdeveloped countries are suffering and will suffer and are likely to suffer for some time until the Western world can support them a bit more. And as you can see, this slide finishes on the COVID-19 crisis, which has affected and impacted us all. But it still, estimates, too many millions of people will still lack access by 2030. And most of those, I'm all too familiar with, because I work with Cliff, who's the African ambassador, and of course, he's well aware that these are major challenges that they face. So there's plenty of positive news there, but the future message is clear. We must all do better. And okay, so next, how are we doing for time, Bert? Sorry, I put my clock on. Are we okay?
Yeah, you're still fine, Mark.
Fine. Okay. I'm not going to be too long now. We believe that there are local community-based solutions to energy and to conservation that affects and impacts the local community. And this seminar is designed for people to hopefully help identify the issues and the challenges, and can contribute to how we're going to set about them, how we can build partnerships, how we can bring together the business sector, education, and the communities, so they all start singing off the same hymn sheet, and we can all help each other in technological ways, in social benefit ways, and sometimes in resource ways. So it's a case of what can you or we do to have some sort of influence and impact. We are very lucky. Our community project is partners with a number of initiatives, and I could have used the full set of slides from them without trying to create my own this evening. But Community Energy England, for instance, we are partners with, and we're working with, and we're sharing information and knowledge with, as we are with the Midland Energy Hub, which is managing a fund that we have managed to access called RCEF, that is available nationally to look at feasibility works. So again, it's a super way of having communities come up with some ideas, some fixes, potentially going to somebody like RCEF, saying we would like to have more electric charges in our area, or we would like to look at small scale solar farm or something of that nature. And our CEF will help to support at least a feasibility study with a future, hopefully, that this government actually supports them with, which is to give them second stage funding to make that happen. We at the Humberston Eco Conservation Centre are very fortunate that we did get a feasibility study to do what we've already achieved, which is to look into the aerobic digestion unit, to look at the impacts environmental wise, to engage with the correct universities and the scientists who have helped us to do all of this feasibility work. And we are one of the, well, in fact, I think we're the only project that's been funded in a stage 2. So we're at that stage 2 now ourselves. And the great thing is that we're able to track and we're able to share that information with others and other community groups that might want to do a similar-ish thing. So other people that have helped us at the moment, Aston University. Aston University, it's the Super Biogen. And again, there's a knowledge sharing network which we are part of. And we can talk to them about the problems we're having engaging with volunteers, for instance, training volunteers, technological issues. They're looking at installing, one of our partners is a wind turbine manufacturer. It's a vertical access turbine that they produce. And they're working with Aston to develop solar panels that can fit on this turbine. Seeing as it's a vertical access, it's got spare space. And so there's some innovative things, and these are all coming from the community, I have to say, which is brilliant. We're working with Octopus. They're only too keen to work with community groups, especially those that's looking longer term to export energy, whether it's in large scale solar farms. And myself, Clive and Cliff have been speaking recently to farmers that are interested in at least donating or coming to an arrangement, let's say, with large scale pieces of land, which then that community could potentially put solar farm, wind farms, and get an investment and a business plan together to make it all work. And this is music to my ears, this sort of thing. Power to Change and Big Lottery also are there for community-based groups. And it's important to say, even at this stage, that although we are a community group, that doesn't mean to say we don't pay people. It just means we work extremely hard to get funds from investors, just like any business does. And we do partner with commercial organizations because we know that they can help us, we can help them. So it is a pretty good message. But overall, what the final sort of thought and the message to end my presentation is businesses, education and communities just got to act now. This seems the most appropriate time we're ever going to get, perhaps in our lifetime, to, you know, to form relationships with associations like ours, who are actively trying to create a voice and a platform for ordinary members of the public to say, this is what we want. We want to be a part of the innovation, part of fixing, you know, some of the areas within energy, within waste, within biodiversity and the environment. And I'm absolutely 100% sure that that we, you know, I finish this off with what can I, what can you, and what can we do together. And my final slide, therefore, Bert, is an obvious one. And I have put a hyperlink at the bottom because there are apps now that's helping us to be more aware of a few things. We can do our own, not energy audit, but our own audit, if you want to call it that. And we can look at each one in turn and do those little things and be part of a growing organization of people, community members, businesses and schools that are really, really working extremely hard to get this message over to young people, over to parents, and over to commercial companies, that we can do something now. Oh, I got that slide a bit wrong there. It says act now. Sorry about that. So the app is definitely worth getting. Hopefully, at least I've said a few things that might invoke a question or two. If it's technical, it will be going to Russell, so beware. But I think we can, and I say we can do more. We've got to keep going, and I'm really, really looking forward to the outcomes of COP26, and hopefully it's not clouded, because it's a huge event. It really, really is a big event now. It's a global stage, but I'm hoping that we don't lose the ethos of information that's, you know, and actions that are going to come as a result of it, and government support, because we're going to need to do that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I think that's a wonderful entry for Russell to take over and pick up some of the issues that he's fundamentally involved in with organisations. So brilliant. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Clive.
Russell.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Clive. Let's wait for Bert to put the slide up. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm Russ Burton. I run a company that's based in Newark, just on the border of Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire. And we're a firm of environmentalists that are heavily focused on low carbon transition, particularly for schools and colleges. So we're very heavily focused on schools and colleges and how they can decarbonise their assets and their operations and support their students' vision of where we're going. The reason I put this slide up here is it's to contextualise what I'm going to talk about shortly. But on a national perspective, one of the things that's been a great success over the last 10 years is the pace by which the electricity grid is decarbonised. And in the last 10 years, the carbon intensity of the grid that we consume has dropped by nearly 70%. And the expectations are that by 2030, that will be near to or at net zero. So in terms of energy and how you use energy, shifting towards an electrification of what we do is quite an important aspect. It's one of the themes that we build into the way that we deliver our projects. The biggest challenge that the government have got in shifting the carbon content of the energy we consume in the UK is the persistent use of gas and the difficulties of shifting us away from gas consumption or other fossil fuels for heating homes and transport, and the need to shift away from petrol or diesel vehicles to decarbonise the transport activity. But there's quite a lot of stuff being done to enable that to happen, and certainly in the heat sector, the wider adoption of heat pumps and the ability of that to become a more relevant technology and more people to become more comfortable with it as a solution is growing at pace. And similarly on transport, I think by 2030, now not 2035, you won't be able to buy a fossil fuel driven vehicle, even a hybrid. It will all be electric. And there's also exploration of hydrogen as an alternative for heating and transport fuel. And hydrogen is a gas that burns quite readily, but its only byproduct is water. So there is quite a lot of work being done, but the biggest challenge remains in decarbonising the heat and transport sectors for the UK. So when we look at our college projects, one of the things we're looking at is how do we make better use of the carbon content of the reducing carbon content of the grid. So can you move on for me? Okay. So one of our big projects that we're working on at the minute is working with Gloucestershire College. Now, this is an organisation surprisingly based in Gloucestershire, but they've got 3 campuses in the Forest of Dean, Cheltenham and Gloucester. The Cheltenham and the Gloucester campuses were built in the early 2000s, so they're relatively modern buildings, reasonably well constructed, but they were installed with relatively old generation technologies. The college are led by a very ambitious group of people who've got an ambition to make a real difference in the way that they build a sustainable college for the future. And driven substantially by the students that they serve, they started to explore how they could decarbonise their assets. And they were starting to recognise things within their student population, such as climate anxiety. And anybody who's heard of that mental health issue, it's a real thing for young people, millennials and Generation Z, who are aware of the climate crisis. They know that it's happening, but are very unsure about what solutions are out there to resolve the issues that they're going to face. So they face this concept of seeing the problem but never seeing the solution. So what Gloucester College were very, very keen to do is to build a decarbonisation strategy that was visible and influenced, and they gave their students a lot of line of sight over what solutions could be made available and how things could progress. So at both campuses, Gloucester and Cheltenham, they have a couple of very, very solid natural assets that help them. One, they've got big car parks, so you've got plenty of space for putting in ground source heat pumps. And 2, they've got large roof areas, which allows them to host quite a lot of solar installation. So unsurprisingly, if you want to move on to the next slide, Bert, we've adopted a 3-pronged attack to helping them to decarbonise their assets. So effectively, it starts with electrification of heat. So the first thing we've looked at is how do we shift their heating systems away from natural gas onto to electric-based heat pumps. And we're putting in 2 large ground source heat pump installations using the car parks as the thermal storage facility to serve the ground source heat pumps. And that will displace 95% of the college's gas consumption in the buildings. They are a catering college, so they're always going to have gas until they shift their catering equipment across to electric equipment. But the heating will primarily move across to electric usage. Because they've got such a large roof space, we've also looked at quite a lot of solar PV, and we've been able to install enough in there that they can generate at least 50% of their electricity loads, even after they've installed the heat pumps, which will consume more electricity. So they've got a very big space that will generate quite a lot of supply. The problem with renewable technology, whether it's wind or solar, is the sun shines most of the time when you don't need it, or the wind blows some of the time when you don't need it. So the challenge of utilising the energy you produce more effectively was one of the critical aspects of the project we've looked at. So optimisation of the systems was effectively delivered by designing in grid-connected battery technology that enables the college to store surplus generation from its own consumption, but more importantly, enables them to trade on the markets overnight, so they can take surplus off the grid. So if the wind is blowing at night and this surplus energy is not being consumed, the college can take that, store it, and then discharge it back to the grid the following day. We're putting thermal stores in so that the heat pumps can operate overnight to charge up the thermal store. So anybody who's of an age that remembers the old storage radiators that used to heat on electricity at night, it's a very similar solution. So we'll be charging thermal stores up overnight so that the college has got plenty of thermal power to start the building the following day. And then the final and probably the most interesting part for me is the adoption of state-of-the-art controls, smart technology and artificial intelligence, which is going to facilitate real-time interactivity of the consumption of the college and the energy generation that they're creating. That'll mean that they can utilise energy when it's needed and turn systems off or discharge to grid when it's not. And that gives them lots and lots of flexibility about how they manage their whole energy demand and supply arrangements. If you just want to move on to the next slide. The outputs of all of that is, if you go back to the sort of energy audit that we did for the college right at the outset, you can see here that the biggest shift in their fuel consumption as a result of this project is going to be in the HVAC and space heating and domestic hot water. So we're moving them significantly away from gas consumption across to electricity consumption. And the great thing is, because of the optimization techniques we're putting in place, their increase in overall energy demand has only gone up by 11%, of which we're going to offset 53% of their consumption from the solar energy that we put in. So as a college, they're actually reducing their energy demand or energy needs, but they're also introducing their own generation. And by this time next year, they will effectively be 50% down on their actual energy consumption from the grid. So the reason I'm sharing all of this is, it might sound quite extreme and sort of significant. All of this activity is deliverable in your home. It doesn't need to be done at scale. It doesn't need to be done in big schools and colleges. It can be done at home. I've adopted exactly the same techniques at my home, and we've shifted our fuel consumption away from oil-based heating systems to ground source heat pumps with solar panels to offset the electricity, and optimization through battery technology and controls that we've installed at home. And it didn't cost the earth. It was expensive, but it wasn't outside of the sensible boundary of investment. If you want to move on. So the opportunity, and this is the real key thing for me. So when I talk about climate anxiety, one of the things that I've always believed in is that schools and colleges are the beacons of community sharing, information, knowledge, etc. And if we can influence this group of people and show them what can be done, they'll do several things. They'll take it into their own homes and share that knowledge with their families. They'll take it into the organisations that they work for, and they'll be able to share it amongst those people. And every college in the country is reliant upon its community employers to serve to provide its customers, which is the students, to come into the businesses, and their ability to absorb knowledge and take it into the community is huge. And one of the things we've done with Gloucestershire College is, not only have we looked at the energy profile, we've also looked at their curriculum-based carbon content, and we've been able to feed into their curriculum activity for catering and construction, areas where they can help students understand where carbon comes from in the products that they use and work with, and how they can take that into their employers. And that started to engage quite significantly with the community and enable them to share knowledge and information. You can see around the Gloucestershire area, more and more employers are starting to embrace these opportunities. So it's not just the carbon efficiency, there is an economic opportunity here as well, because the college are investing quite a significant amount of money, but they will see that return sit with them for a long time. So the installation, the equipment we're installing will be there for 20 years plus, and it will give them a long-term opportunity to take advantage of a lower energy cost and lower energy activity. So the economics are sound, and as perverse as it may sound to everybody else, the fact that the energy market is spiking at the minute is actually quite positive for an organisation like this who have invested into renewable technology, because they're effectively decoupled from the grid. So their energy security, their ability to have an energy supply working for them into the future without the need to rely on the grid is significant. And for me, the wider engagement here is, if you can multiply this process up across other colleges and schools, and there's a group of colleges and schools we're working with there who are also looking to similarly take on this approach, the multiplier effect of all those students, all those employers, all those people being able to see what's being done and then embrace some, if not all, of the solutions in their own businesses and their own homes is massive. So we see the adoption of renewable technology in schools and colleges is a significant method for sharing the knowledge, sharing the opportunity, and widening the deployment of this. And we don't have to wait for others to do it. It's there and we can do it now. And it's all very doable within our own reach. So that was why I wanted to be involved in this. I just wanted to share the opportunity that could come from this activity and take advantage of some of the good thing that is actually being done at national level in decarbonising the electricity grid. So thank you for that.
That's absolutely brilliant, Russell. Thank you so much. It's always reassuring when you bring the human element into the technology. And when you use the phrase climate anxiety, you can observe that in so many settings where people are saying, I'm stuck, I don't quite know how to get out of this, and I become anxious. And it's not just in climate and energy, but it's also other parts of life. And whatever we can do to help people see an opportunity is brilliant. So thank you so much for that.
That's right.
Can I start with a question to both of you, in fact? And that's about how would you take those messages you've had to smaller towns, villages or parishes in Lincolnshire? What would you be telling them about what they could be thinking about? Shall we start with Mark?
Yeah, I mean, just because they're remote from, major towns and cities, we can engage with technology at the moment. I know we're going to have an immediate, they might not have social accounts, they might not, have a PC capable of internet connection. There's always reasons as to why they wouldn't, but we should use and harness as much as we can through social platforms that they can see a community element and a benefit. There's no doubt in my view, when we first used Facebook, for instance, to promote the Humberston Eco Conservation Centre, within 1 month, we had 1,500 followers. You can look at an awful lot of Facebook accounts at the moment, and they haven't got anywhere near that. And yet they're more established than we are. So we know we managed to use that single platform to connect with 1,500 people who have talked and communicated with us and then shared that information. So that is one area. I think what we've got to try to do also, especially to vulnerable and smaller groups, is we've got to try to engage with them in terms of delivering outreach. Education is something we can do quite easily by going along to the town hall, going along to a village hall, and just generally talking about the little network that we all belong to, because we are forming a network. It might be just at the moment Grimsby, Cleethorpes, but then it'll be North Links, Northeast Links. All of these are networks that are now communicating really, really positively through technology such as we are using tonight. Facebook, obviously doing live, if you like, presentations in front of people, which we've not been able to do this year, regrettably. But what that has effectively done is force more people to use technology. But what we've got to be really, really careful of in the sectors that we're talking about, we don't become over technical. Russell, I've got a pad of questions to ask you, which I'd like to do later on. But I do think the key to that engagement, because it's clear that certainly Russell and I share many passions, but what we've got to do with those people, regardless of age, ability, social or economic circumstances, engage. We've got to engage by telling them a story, something they want to hear, something they want to be part of. We've got to do it well. Then we've got to have a network of communicators to enrich, to just deliver messages that make sense, that they can understand, even though they may not be able to afford to do some of these things, because that's a different matter entirely. But our last objective should be to inspire, to, when we've left them, they should go away. I can do something. I can do this in my home, retrofitting wise. I can, buy a small scale AD unit, which you can, by the way. You can buy small scale AD units, and you can use your back garden to start this, put your waste in it, and it's doing something positive. So that's my thought process. We're not rich enough to go on televisions and all that sort of stuff. So it's just it's communities networking with each other that will spread, hopefully, the word, and people like us that are committed, that are not doing everything for financial reasons, that are willing to go out and talk to those people. I've got a conversation in 2 weeks' time, for instance, with the local beekeeping network, not about bees, because they know that's their job, but they want to know about Humberston Eco Conservation Centre, which is great. And I am absolutely happy to go along at 7:30 or 8, I think it's 7:30 for a couple of hours and talk to maybe up to 40, 50 people. And every time we do that, if we do it properly, I hope that they will be inspired to like our project, hopefully like myself, but more importantly, to do something.
Okay. Russell, in terms of the what you presented there for a college, is that acceptable? Is it something that could be done within a parish or a small town in Lincolnshire, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I pick up on a lot of what Mark said. Accessibility is critical. I think the energy sector, and I think the renewable energy sector, and I think environmentalists have adopted, as most specialists do, their own language, which has barriered a lot of people from understanding what is actually being said to them. So simplification of the message for me is absolutely critical, and then making the solutions visible so people can see what it means, and it's not scary and it's not something to be fearful of, is essential. So if you go back to the colleges, we're doing what we're doing at Gloucestershire College in a very visible way to enable the students to see, feel, touch it. So all of the energy centres will be accessible, so students can go and see this thing working and see how it functions. And again, that helps. But
I've just bought on behalf of the charity £2,000 worth. I was talking to Clive about this actually just before we came onto this seminar, but I echo what Russell's saying there. On a bigger scale, they need hands-on, see it going, see what energy it's producing, how that then is benefiting them. So in our smaller way, I've just bought this fantastic load of equipment. I can't wait to demonstrate it to people, but we'll be able to show kids how electrolyzers work, how hydrogen works live, and we'll be able to demonstrate vertical axis turbines, solar, wind, all out of a box. And when that occurs and you can plug things in and see that it's producing X volts and this, that, and the other, that to me makes sense. Okay. So the communication, like you say, Russell, it's got to be simplified to the average person.
And I think the critical thing is that change resistance is probably one of the biggest barriers we face, not just in this sector, but in any change process. And what you need is a local leader. So you do need somebody that's prepared to grab it, own it, and help his neighbours and peers keep pushing through and not give in to the challenges that will inevitably come. So that local leader is really important. And as I say, simplify it, make it accessible, but then make sure there's somebody there that can actually drive it on. Otherwise it will fail.
You said something that was important to me, Russell, and we might have to take this conversation after this. But I think a lot of people now in the community understand about wind. They see these huge propellers flying around next to their neighbourhood or on the way to Gateshead or wherever it happens to be these days. They see that there's now huge solar farms popping up. So they understand that these are all nice green technologies. But you said something that interested me and that we might have to take a little bit further, because I have gone through a huge process with this off-grid place. We can put these technologies, these mix of technologies together. What's missing, and I think you mentioned this, is this smart technology that sits in between it all, so that what we don't do is have a generator going where it's just to put the kettle on and the energy is then wasted that could be stored in batteries. So I noticed on your slide, you've got Tesla. We're talking to Acceler Energy, which is down the road, and they look at power walls like Tesla, and they're developing an African project using renewed batteries, because there's a lot of life in lithium batteries. So I'd be really interested to talk to you more about this, because it is balancing and not wasting when we all do this, we all waste our technology. You know, how many people switch the light off when they go from room to room or have a PIR? The answer is they probably don't. So there's a little bit of guilt with us all. You know, none of us are perfect. Let's be real. But I'd love to speak to you about this, because to me, when you look at the major wastages of energy and carbon production is transport and our homes. And of course, we've just seen these idiots on the M25 that have their view on what they should be doing to wake the government up, which is absolutely unacceptable. But, you know, a question that I'm asked, because we are next to a 400 home development, is why isn't there a solar panel on any of them? Why is the builder not forced legislatively to put waste disposal units in, bloody solar, and heat source, air source pumps? Why? What is the matter with us? Anyway, I'm ranting.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mark, for the personal passion coming out there. Two things I like to say. I'm going to wrap this up in a moment, and about we are so thankful for Mark and for Russell. This has been a challenging area to look at, because it has so many implications for personal decisions. You know, do I go on holiday on a plane? Do I buy my next car as electric? When I'm getting the waste out of my house, where do I put it? Do I play golf at Market Raisin more than twice a week? How do I behave to make a difference is one thing. But of course, we have a grand challenge in our work with our UNA Greater Lincolnshire, which is if it's not you to make a difference, then who will do it? And if it's not now, then when? Which is really what Greta Thunberg has been saying with blah, blah, blah on the news today. It also, for me, is about if it's not you who can make a difference, then who will? And so it's those who can that can make a difference have to be standing up and saying something. And I'm thankful that you've been able to point leadership routes out for people to have a go. So those that's watched this and watching this in the future will see that there are things that are on the plate ready to go, and there are new thinking actions, new thinking and action that's happening to make a difference to new things in the future. So I'm going to call it to an end there, and thank you both for taking part, and all those that are part of this as well. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Welcome.